All right, we are live. Thank you for joining in. The Island Viper. We have Jason and Steve here from White Elephant Toys and My Vintage Toys and Trains. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what you do and the projects that you have coming out, working on right now. We'll talk about some of the stuff that you've already been working on, Jason and Steve, and we'll show those as well.
Awesome. You want to get started?
You want to go first, Jason?
Either way.
Okay, I can kind of go first. So, I've been doing toy shows for a number of years with my brother, and we started selling GI Joes and other action figures and toys. And kind of we started as collectors, and he's more the train guy. That's where the train part of the My Vintage Toys and Trains comes in, and from that, we started the Kentuckiana GI Joe Toy Expo, which has become, I think we were looking at 13 shows now, and it's just been going crazy. And we added the second show, the GI Joe Winterfest, which is coming up on January 25th, which will be our fifth winter show. So we've been around doing that, and then I've kind of met up with Jason while we were doing shows, and he and some other folks, and we started producing figures, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the Adventure Command and Astro Command figures, which have like an example of them here, and we'll hit a little bit more on that, but that kind of gives a little background for where I come from, and I'll throw it over to Jason, let him give a little background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so got a similar. I've been basically collecting toys since I was a kid. I collected all through middle school, high school. Was collecting GI Joe and more of the 3 3/4 inch stuff, Star Wars, and in the pursuit of finding things, I started also selling toys, and I guess back in the mid 90s started getting into Mego and Mego figures, and that was a good format to start like customizing, because the scale works well with it's a little easier to sculpt things at that scale and stuff. So I kind of tried my hand at sculpting and casting parts in resin and painting and making clothes and different things, and that led to starting to produce things in China. I guess when I started customizing things, people would start to ask for a copy of it. So I was always thinking, when I made something, how can I make more of them? And then that kind of led to starting to work in China and stuff with factories and produce stuff. And I think mainly for both of us, it's people told me when I was selling stuff, buy what you like. That way, if it doesn't sell, you're not worried about being stuck with it. And I kind of feel like that's the same way we approached stuff we make, is that we make stuff that we like, so all the stuff that we're working on is all stuff that I want to have in my collection. And I think that kind of gives us a little bit of a leg up in the fact that we kind of understand the aesthetic and the, what some of these vintage toys were trying to convey there. I think we kind of get that. So, but mainly we're collectors. We love toys and love talking about them, love collecting them, meeting people, trading, selling stuff, buying stuff. And that's kind of just led to this. I think I met Steve at Joe Fest, maybe.
Mego meet first.
Oh yeah.
Yes. We were at Mego meet, and I was talking because I'd been talking to David Lee, I guess, at a Joe Con before that, and then he was there, and then David said, the guy you really need to talk to is Jason, who's right here at the next booth, and so and then we continued it at Joe Fest, which was like a couple of weeks later, I guess, and then it just bloomed from there.
Yeah. So at that time, I was really heavy into the 8-inch Mego stuff, and still I'm still into it. And Steve approached me on a project of something that I liked, but I wasn't into it as much as he was at the time. But as I started to kind of dig into it, I've quickly fell in love with this stuff, and so it's been a real fun ride. Steve and I work well together, and Steve's got a lot of great creative ideas and a lot of knowledge about the history of some of this stuff, and we've kind of tried to put all that into the DNA of everything that we work on.
So when I first came across both of you guys, like I first met you with the Kentuckiana show, Steve, and then the first encounter that you and I had, Jason, was one of the projects that you did was with Darren Howlett and Red Laser's Army, which I'm actually going to be having him on, I think, next week.
Oh, nice.
His new lines.
Yeah.
So that and Strike Force Alpha.
Yeah.
And the Command action figures. These are the three projects that I am most familiar with from you. I know that you have other toy lines. What other toy lines are you involved in, Steve? I know that Jason's been involved with like several other people kind of making stuff through him, I guess. Is that kind of how that works?
I mean, I'm not going to answer for Steve. Steve, it's a little different with Steve and I. We're kind of partners on this stuff. So I do make some stuff for other people where I'm just the project manager, but Steve and I kind of go in creatively 50-50 and decide what's going to be made. And, you know, he has a lot more, I guess, knowledge about some of this stuff. And so trying to get the right aesthetic, trying to get everything right. That's a lot of what, you know, Steve's doing. And then I've got a lot of experience managing the projects in China. So that's kind of my part. But this has all pretty much been Steve's brainchild and passion. I'm just the middleman that kind of makes some of it happen. But
he does the hard work. He deals with the factory and takes the late night calls and stuff like that. And so it works well for both of us to
so
each his own
late night calls. What about some of the challenges that you face by manufacturing toys in China when you live here in the U.S.?
Well, so, and I don't remember, in the early 2000s, I think it was, I started making toys, and a series of unfortunate events. I've lost about $40,000 worth of tooling in China. And so that's happened to several, you know, people. So one of the things I tell people, I mean, now at that time you couldn't find a factory, you couldn't talk to a factory. Now you can get online and talk to 250 factories or 1,000 factories. But the real trick is finding someone that's going to be over there in China that's going to help you and make sure your projects are done right, that you don't get ripped off, that everything is, you know, they start to know what you expect and the quality that you're looking for. And so that's really, I think, the value in what I offer to the, you know, I guess this partnership is that was fortunate enough to get hooked up with a good project manager over there. And that has worked out real well for us. So they kind of know without asking, you know, the aesthetic of what we're doing. They, you know, for the most part. And so they're over there making sure that, you know, the creative people and the people on the floor and everybody's doing it the way we wanted to, you know, be done. So that, I think that's given us a lot of advantage. And I know a lot of people will go to China and go to the factories and different things. And we just really have no need to do that. We have a good communication line, and, you know, things are being taken care of. And so, but what I like to say though is it's real easy to get ripped off. It's real easy to lose a lot of money. It's real easy to contact a factory, but finding one that's going to do good quality work, not rip you off, going to try to deliver things in a timely manner. That's the real challenge. And then of course, like with the Strike Force Alpha project, there was a lot of things going on with COVID where all the factories were shutting down multiple times. You've got, you know, different holidays and stuff where they shut down. There was a lot of flooding going on at that time. And so there's a lot of things that can happen outside of your control where these, some of these people live there in those areas where the factories are at. When the factories shut down, they all go back to, where they came, like, I guess where they grew up and stuff. And so the factory shut down for 2 weeks or a month or, whatever. And so that was a lot of what was going on with Strike Force, was a lot of things like that. But there's, you asked about challenges. I mean, other than those type of things, I think the challenge is communication, and getting people to understand, different things. So my wife and I were doing a line of girl dolls that we would do the paint masters and everything for the makeup and stuff, and then they would paint the figures and come back with something totally different. So like they have a view of what American women look like or something, and even though you gave them a sample and you spec'd it all out, they would kind of come back with something different. And so that was something that was, that would happen. That's really frustrating. So we don't have that as much with this kind of sci-fi and stuff, because I don't think they really have an expectation of what it's supposed to look like. It's just whatever you give them, that's all they know.
So they're kind of putting their expectations into the information that you give them and interpreting it in their own way.
Yeah. So a lot of things I do I found useful is everything I do is graphic. So if I'll write up a communication by email, but there's going to be a lot of pictures and a lot of notes on the pictures and Pantone colors. And so I try to do everything I can to give them a good visual of what we're looking for. So that's that. I was just talking to Chad from Darren's line. What the name escapes me right now. Is it Hidden
Legends?
I know this. I don't know why I don't remember it, but
yeah, I do too. Yeah, I do too.
My mind went blank there for a second, but they're using my factory, and so I stepped in and talked to them, the factory folks, a little bit. They were having a little bit of back and forth about an issue there.
Oh, so he's using your factory. Legends of the Hidden Force.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I knew that.
Mainly like ninja martial arts,
kind of Remco stuff.
Right, and it looks like some of his figures are actually inspired by the 1995 canceled G.I. Joe line, the Ninja Commandos set. Yeah,
so Darren kind of gave me, as you alluded to earlier, Darren with Red Laser, he kind of gave me a leg up and helped me out with some figures that I wanted to make, and then when he got back in it, we hooked back up, and I got him set up with my project manager and stuff, and so they're managing that project together.
Nice. So what brought on the projects that you have going, Steve? What got you started in that?
Well, originally we started thinking about doing some pieces to repair some old figure lines. And that was the original thought process. And then when I eventually started talking to Jason, and we moved into it, Jason said, "Well, instead of just doing these replacement parts, what if we make a new figure and in the same kind of scale and whatnot?" And I said, I'm game for that. Let's go ahead and try that. And at one point, I told my brother, I said, "Well, if this doesn't go over well, I'm going to have a whole garage full of these Adventure Command figures." But luckily, once we got them in, we weren't the only people that liked them. Other people just immediately took to it, and there's a good, strong following out there that just devours everything that we put out, and we appreciate that. They give us good feedback on things that they'd like to see, and but that it originally started that way, and it's bloomed, and just it enables the creativity to flow out and to kind of think of things. And I know I've talked with you a couple of times about some things that we're bouncing around that we may end up doing that I think are going to be really really neat when they do happen.
Yeah. Have you looked at any broader distribution, or are you mainly just wanting to keep this like for yourself, like you do it currently with the website and toy shows?
That
like Big
seems to
Bad
be
Toy Store or Entertainment Earth.
it seems to be working best for us right now in the smaller volume. I'm not sure, how big the demand is out there. If the demand grows and that seems to be the direction to go in, I'm sure that's the direction we'll look at. But right now it's a smaller market, and this seems to be something that we can kind of handle and have control of.
Right on.
Yeah, I think that's always been a situation for me. Is I've when you start getting into wholesaling and stuff like that, it's a hard nut to crack, because it's like, what's your potential audience, and if let's say that there's 1,000 people that want to buy what you're selling, and you move that up to 1,200 or 1,500, and then all your customers go to one of these big toy places to buy the product, then you're just getting wholesale dollars. And so
Right.
to try to, for me, when I put money into this, I don't want to lose money. I'd like to get my money back. And
Yeah.
really my main thing is I like to have money to make more projects. And so it's definitely got to be a consideration, is, and I don't think there's a magic formula, but as Steve said, you have to get to a certain level where you don't lose your primary customers, but you gain a new audience and gain new customers. And so that's something I think we could. To me, this is kind of like Amigo figure or something of that nature, where it can be its own thing, or it could be the Lone Ranger, or it could be the Phantom, or it could be some other cool vintage property. And so I think that something like that would be good to try to do the Lone Ranger on our body, an event, make it look vintage. That might be something that would have some broader appeal, or the Phantom or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like the similar to like what Mezco Toys does. They pretty much have like a buck that they use for a lot of different figures, and that character is determined by the accessories, the clothes, the head that's on it, the face, stuff like that. So
yeah. So I that's something that I hope that this continues and that we can explore. I mean, I think not to say that we've got a solid plan, but Space 1999. I mean, there's so many vintage properties out there that would do well in this with this look and this body, and so that
And
would be something.
the size is good for a lot of things like that, where it's a big enough size that you can do some neat things with it, and have interchangeable uniforms and accessories, and it's not so big that it's going to take up so much space.
Yeah, that's kind of the size range you get into where soft goods start becoming a thing for them. And then, of course, you have the 12-inch figures. I saw a post where you are going to be putting out a new 12-inch body.
Yeah, we're really excited about that.
Yeah, tell us about it. What's different about this than other 12-inch bodies?
So, well, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, the idea basically became, we have this body that we've been using for the Adventure Command and whatnot, and we kind of got to talking, Jason, and I said, what if we blew this up to 12 inches? There's a lot of like the old vintage G.I. Joe and Johnny West and other figures that were 12 inches, and you could have these new, more developed muscular type bodies that would be more articulated than the old bodies that are out there. So you could do a lot more with it, and and the thing that Jason was talking about that really works well, it's got this plug and play ability where you can take the arms off and you can have a limited run with some robotic arms, or you could do some different things in different heads. So that was it's got a lot of opportunities and options that you can do with it.
So that reminds me of the Strike Force Alpha pop and swap feature, where you have the interchangeable parts for the arms and heads. And
yeah. So that a lot of that came about. I'm a big fan of the Galios toys. I don't know if you're familiar with that line, but
I am not.
Okay, so it's an action figure line. It's an independent toy company, and there's several different people that put them out all under one umbrella. But they're kind of like the Legos of action figures. You can build characters with them and stuff. They're modular, and so I'm come from a customizer background, and pretty much most of the stuff that I like to work on is not everybody can sculpt or paint or sew or do all these things. So we try to like build some options into what we do so that people can, just people with different skill levels can kind of create their own characters or their own look or whatever. And so we try to make a lot of interchangeable stuff with what we work on.
So a lot of kit bashing and parts swapping.
Yeah, I mean,
I will add one thing. We've done the Kentuckiana show and whatnot, and so in the past we've had some like show special uniform sets and whatnot. And part of this is a little selfish on my part. This gives us a body that we can use. So now that we can have a figure with the uniform set as part of the show exclusive going forward. So that was kind of a neat option that it added in.
Yes. One thing about that body, and it's something that is kind of a thing with a lot of stuff that we work on, is that in a lot of ways these things are taking a step back in time. And so if one was to talk about this body, I mean, it's not the most articulated body. It's not going to be the most detail sculpted body. So it's an intentionally supposed to look like it's from the 70s. And so some people, you either get that vibe or that aesthetic or you totally miss it. And some people are going to look at it and go, yeah, such and such body, it's got 40 points of articulation and this one only has this much. But we're definitely trying to cater to a certain look, a certain time period. And so and the reason why I bring that up is because some of these things become a problem with the factory, because I'll give them something and they want to improve it. They want to make it better. They want to make it work better, look better, function better. And I'm like, no, it's supposed to be like that. Leave it alone. And so that can become a challenge. They kind of got it figured out now, not to try to improve too much, because that's what everybody's trying to be more articulated, more detailed, more posable, and
right.
That's not what we're doing. But what we do try to do is improve things in a way that is not noticeable, or that you don't recognize that it's different than what you used to have. And so with the Adventure Command body, the original figure that inspired this, it did not have articulated feet. And then there were some other articulation points and stuff that we added to that figure. So it looks natural and it looks like, like it's supposed to, but it's a little different. And we try to hide those little things in there so that they don't stand out, but they kind of improve, the overall function or look.
Yeah, you mentioned the articulated feet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here. I mean,
you can pull that foot out, so that body's very modular. And so,
okay.
So we have monster feet and monster hands and things that can plug right in there. And so, we try to build that in there. It's real easy to take those figures apart. Oh, there you go. Steve's got one.
This guy has the monster hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice suit, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that
you may see more of that in the future at some point.
He's trying to sneak a suit past me. I didn't see.
Oh.
Yeah, funny. The Bobby Vance in the G.I. Joe community, right? So I've been wanting to work on this muscle body for a long time, and Steve and I have talked about it, and this is similar to what happened when we did the Adventure Command body. It's like, it's not something that you can just sit down and go, I'm going to build a body today. I sat on that project the first, after talking to Steve, for months and months and months because I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know, it hadn't come to me yet what to do, how to do that. And finally, I just sat down at the kitchen table, took a vintage figure, and started cutting stuff off and sculpting things on and playing around with it, and then making molds and casting parts.
I'd get emails and messages from Jason. How's this look? How's this look?
Yeah.
Like it's on the right track.
Yeah.
You need a little. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we just kind of did that back and forth until we got it. And then same thing with this muscle body. It's just been kind of in the back of our minds for a long time. And I knew it was going to take somebody that really understood, what we were trying to do here. And so I sent Bobby Vance some nice photoshopped, detailed drawings and things, and some scan files from a few different things, and said, I want to take this and cut this off and put it over here and Frankenstein this thing all together. We was taking all these different elements and putting them together, and Bobby did a great job of making that happen for us. So
yeah, I didn't know you were working on stuff with Bobby. Bobby's really, really good at what he does.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I said, I mean, we've probably been talking about that for a couple of years, and there's a lot of super talented, people but I knew that was going to take somebody that really understood what we were trying to do. It's more than just the aesthetics, but how it's supposed to move and work and, all that. And so we just
actually got a pretty neat project that Bobby's going to be at the Winterfest show, and I've got a pretty neat project I've been working on for him. I've been printing a full scale, well, actually it's 50% scale, but it's still massive, mass device.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
I've got one piece of the one that I'm printing.
Some pictures of that, right?
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like this thing, it's monstrous. It's gigantic.
Well, we need to talk to you about making this guy, but making a couple jumbos. This is
if I've got files, I can make it.
Yeah, I got the files now. This is a figure we're working on right now. And he's going to have a few different, got a cape here that Steve and I need to talk about if it's going to be kind of a over the shoulder type cape or more regular style cape. But we also have a crown for him and a scepter and like a 50s ray gun that we just finished up. I'm waiting for those parts to come, but it'd be cool to make have you make a like a 15-inch, couple of 15-inch guys of these.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man.
That would be crazy. So I think
that's the prototype, fully articulated version of the one that you're coming out with, right?
Yeah,
the one's gonna be released.
I just kind of saw him as a caveman type guy, so we gave him a club. And then kind of got he could be a gladiator. So we gave him a little gladiator armor and then the gladiator helmet. And then, so we kind of been playing around with this character, and there's different classes, and we got ones that are just like mindless brutes. And we got ones that are, more kind of royalty kind of guys. And that's been kind of one of the fun things about what we do is that, and I think why people like some of this stuff is that we try to like put together a little story to go with what we're doing. So we don't try to fill out all the blanks, but we try to give a kind of a backbone or a frame to our continuing the storyline with the characters and different things that we do.
So will you have different heads for that body?
Maybe down the road we've talked about that. But also different colors and, probably glow in the dark and, different things like that. So we plan on doing some fun things.
Man, I'm a sucker for translucent stuff, like clear figure parts and glow in the dark stuff. So
yeah. Have you seen our clear figures?
We like that stuff.
Yeah.
He bought some at the last show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got a set of them.
Yeah. Well,
I think he bought this guy. I think you bought this one. Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got that one. I don't remember when I picked this one up. It might have been the summer show.
There's been some summer show, yeah.
Had to get this guy because I mean you can tell what he's inspired by. So
Yeah.
He does look familiar, doesn't he?
a little bit, yeah.
Well, that's one of the fun things about what we're doing, I think, is, and I think it's a little unique. Some of the stuff that we've been doing, there's not a lot of people doing, 70s inspired sci-fi and adventure and that kind of stuff. So we try to put that out, into everything that we do. So.
And see, that's one of the things that I loved about G.I. Joe when I was growing up was like the sci-fi aspect of it. Because when I was a kid and even now, I'm like always been real big into all of the sci-fi stuff, all the old sci-fi movies and horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, this stuff is like, it's not necessarily a scale that I collect, but it's right up my alley as far as subject matter goes.
Oh, yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, that I like that angle when with the 80s figures, especially when everything kind of took a little bit more of a space and sci-fi thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's just a lot more places your imagination can go with that,
Right. Yeah, and I feel the same way. Not everything has to be like realistic military.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Well, then you can add in creatures and aliens and all that kind of stuff, and then it's just everything explodes after that.
Yeah, I'll show you something here real quick that didn't last nearly long enough, in my opinion. But
yeah,
the G.I. Joe Mega Marines, like these could have been so much cooler, but like I love this stuff, and I know that Lenny on the Joe team has mentioned doing some of the Mega Monsters for the classified line. And I know that there'd be a bunch of guys crying about it out there, but like, could you imagine this figure scaled up for 1/12 and fully articulated?
Oh yeah,
that'd be cool.
Well, and a lot of figures from that era too. If you get past some of the paint apps and stuff, there's some beautiful sculpts in there and some really good ideas,
And this actually kind of reminds me of the one that you just showed. What's going to be the name of that figure?
Gargon.
Gargon?
Yeah.
Okay, so Gargon also reminds me of an old Super Joe character.
Oh, yeah.
He does have some similarities there.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder if these Mega Monsters aren't also kind of inspired by some of that stuff.
Yeah, what was the three aliens? Three of my favorite Joe figures. The Lunatics. Yeah.
I'd have to look it up. I don't remember them right offhand.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, because you had the American releases that they put out as KB exclusives, I think.
Yeah, and then the Mexican.
Yeah, and then the Mexican versions. The Mexican versions had way better color schemes than the ones that we got here.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's some good stuff. Yeah, we try to throw some 50s sci-fi and 60s sci-fi and stuff in our stuff too. So it's a mixed genre of a lot of things that we like.
And with the Astro Command and the sci-fi aspect, just nothing's off limits. We can do anything we want with it. We can make things any color we want, and it's an open book as to what we can do and where we can go.
Yeah, you can put those kits together however you want. If people like them, great, and if not, well, I mean, you've got them. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting more of those.
And it's been fun seeing some of the people that buy them and then go through and they do some customizing on them and do some recreations and whatnot. And there's been a number of folks that have bought some of the bodies without the heads, and I'm really anxious to see once they develop some new heads and some new stuff and post them up and see what kind of ideas they had.
Yeah, I was really surprised. A friend of mine messaged me the other day and was asking me if I did anything with 1/6 scale figures, and he was showing me some heads that he found. And I mean, just like these incredibly realistic detailed heads in 1/12 scale. It's like, how are people doing this? This is looks amazing. You know, it's just so realistic, right down to the eyes, even.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of those things too, that like with our stuff that we got to kind of pull back on. So some of our stuff is hand sculpted. And a lot of people are not doing it anymore. And that's been kind of an issue I've had with digital sculpting for a long time, is that, you know, if you look at like a 3 3/4 inch Joe, and you look at how thick that outline is around the belt buckle or something, and then you imagine blowing that up to your size,
Right.
that belt buckle would be like 3 inches thick. You know, I'm exaggerating, but they overemphasize details and stuff when they did that, you know, hand sculpting, and those guys really knew that when they layered paint on there and it built it up and everything, it was going to end up with a finished product that, you know, looked really well. And I think a lot of figures now are kind of lacking some of that. So we still do some, it's a little bit more work and a little bit more of a pain, but this Gargon character, you know, is mainly digital. It was scanned, and so we scanned it in. And then a friend of ours, Chad Gordy, did the scanning work, and then Todd Broadwater is another friend of ours. He did the digital sculpting. We did a lot of work with that, but a lot of the other stuff that we've done has all been hand sculpted and sent over there, and they've scanned them in. And years ago when I started doing this, they did everything with pantograph, where there was no digital sculpting, and basically you sent them an example, and they had a little probe, and they would probe your part like with a little, you know, they would take your part like this, and they would take a probe all around it, and over here there was a cutter cutting out a piece of metal to make the mold, and that's how everything was made. And then they went, you know, into digital sculpting and stuff. But we still do a lot of hand sculpting, which a lot of guys aren't doing anymore.
I know Matt LaCroix did a lot of work on the Strike Force Alpha figures, and
yep.
Operation Recall, the project by Carson Metaxas. He has some of the original G.I. Joe guys from the 80s,
yeah,
the original ARAH guys that have worked on like all of the sculpting, the paint masters, all of that.
Yeah.
Those figures are going to be digitally scanned at the factory and turned into a file to cut the molds.
Yeah, so we did that too. So originally Strike Force started off as a digital buck, and we resin printed those with I don't know if you're familiar with form printers. Resin
yes,
printers, but
I got to play with some of those resin samples.
Oh, okay, yeah. And so we basically had a buck and that we created, and then Matt did, you know, hand sculpted everything, and you know, we went back and forth on that, and we sent those hand sculpted parts over there, and then scanned them. You know, they scanned them in, and then went back in digitally and cleaned up some of the stuff. So that is one drawback to doing the hand sculpting and stuff, is that scanner is going to pick up every scratch, every flaw. I mean, these parts have to be like glass, you know, smooth. And so, you know, you have to go back in and do some digital cleanup. But I think that's one of the reasons why I really like the Strike Force line, is because the sculpting work Matt did. It reminds me of the old school, you know, way they did it. And we also had one of the original G.I. Joe sculptors sculpt the Dr. Diablo figure that we made.
Bill Merkel.
Yeah, Bill. Yeah. And he's doing the stuff for Operation Recall as well. So
yeah.
They're doing theirs. I think they're doing 2-ups, so their sculpts are bigger. We sculpted ours to size.
Oh, it was sculpted to size and then scanned?
Yeah, ours were, but I think they're doing 2-ups from my understanding. They're probably, I don't know, 5-6 inches, I'm thinking.
I know some of the stuff I saw, the figures were disproportionate to how the finished product was going to look, and they were talking about resizing some of that stuff
Yeah.
digitally once the files were created, so that it would be more.
Well, that's the cool thing about the digital stuff is that if you sculpt something by hand and you make a mistake or you got to fix something, you got to start over. And so,
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of neat stuff going on with all this 3D printing and 3D sculpting, and it's just getting better and better. And hopefully, at some point, we can manufacture more stuff here in the States. I see that happening, at least on a smaller scale. 20 years ago, I was working with some mold makers and stuff here in the States. And, the problem was a mold that I pay $1,000 for in China, they need $5,000 for that same mold here. And so there's just not enough demand for the product to ever pay back, the cost. But I think, we're gonna be able to 3D print molds and things. They're already doing some of this, and eventually you'll be able to do like injection plastic and stuff with these things. And I see that happening pretty quickly. That's going to be a neat time when you can do little limited runs and stuff.
Another issue with the factories here in America is that you have such a high volume demand. Like they have such a high minimum on how much of something you have to produce.
Yes.
I've seen in some of the factories in China, and what I've seen from some other third-party producers of action figures, you can do a run of figures that's like 500 pieces.
Yeah.
At one point in time, I was talking to a factory in China. I have no idea where it was or anything anymore. Long forgotten, but they were talking about, minimum run 500 per design.
Yeah, my factory does 500. They've a lot of factories now want to do more than that, but we've given, with the various projects I've been working on, and then other people I've hooked up with the factory. They've worked with us. I think, in fact, Steve, we made a couple things where we made just a couple hundred, right?
Yeah, they gave us a little flexibility because the volume of
Besides
business and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they were flexible with us on that, and that I credit that to Jason's relationship with the folks over there. That's where we're able to get some benefits from that.
Yeah, it's been a fun thing.
Yeah, so obviously you're using more plastic than it's going to kind of add up to more cost. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what it's a hard nut to crack to get, when you think you know what you're doing, and that you understand how things work over there, that you get a curveball. But I think that sometimes it's more looking at the total dollar amount. They want to make, they want to make $10,000 or $20,000, and so more so than getting so been out of shape about the numbers. But we've been really lucky with that. I mean, a lot of the factories have higher runs, and they're bigger factories. You have to wait a little bit longer when you're working with a smaller factory, but I think they're a little bit more flexible and stuff.
One of the big things that I've been told about producing stuff over there is that if you have a project that you put into a factory, some of those factories will bump you down in their queue to bring somebody else ahead of you that's paying more money for it, and then try to get you to pay more to get back up in the queue.
Yeah, so that was another thing that happened with Strikeforce. I'd already had a long-standing relationship with my factory, and and a lot of the stuff I was doing was like 8-inch scale, and I was concerned with doing smaller figures, and I didn't know how they were going to turn out. And I tried to get it, I got hooked up with a bigger factory that's working on some of these other projects for other people, and it ended up being kind of a mess for me and delayed my project, and I ended up taking it back to my factory. And so that is a problem that I see with. There's a lot of indie companies using the same factory, and if you've got an order in for $20,000 and somebody comes in with an order for $50,000, you get to wait.
Right. You got to wait until they're free to do it, and basically
Yeah.
nothing else going on.
So the interesting thing about some of this too, which I've kind of learned over the years, is we use that term factory, but sometimes you're not really dealing with a factory. You're dealing with a person with a laptop and a lot of factory connections. So if you want to make, this soda bottle, you're talking to the factory, but your factory rep is having this label made at this factory over here, having this lids made at another factory, having a bottle made over here, and then somewhere else they're assembling them for you. And so it can be kind of seamless, but sometimes you're not really dealing with a factory. You're dealing with a person who's coordinating all these things. They don't generally, they don't always make the boxes for the figures at the same place. They don't make the clothes at the same place. They're making them at, you got somebody coordinating it for you. And that's why it's important to have a good relationship.
I didn't realize that it was that split up.
Yeah, I mean, they don't tell you that. So, you're dealing with X factory, and that may be where your person works at, and that may be where your stuff's assembled at. But, your molds may be made at a machine shop factory. That's all they do is make molds. And if you're getting rooted hair, it could be done at a doll factory. If you're getting clothes made, or, it's over here. And then all that stuff will come together in one location, and they'll assemble it. And so that's kind of nice, because if you had to spec that work out yourself, it would be impossible.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I always thought of it as like departments in a single facility.
Yeah,
and multiple facilities.
Yeah, and I'm sure that some of the larger factories, some of the bigger toy companies, they may be more modular like that inside the factory. But like for what I'm doing, they're gonna find the best place, the best person to do the job, and then bring it all together. And so it's kind of seamless now, which is nice. They handle the shipping and they handle all of it, so it's engineering. So when we send them digital files, if there's issues, they've got people there that can help work through them. And so it's a lot better now than it was 20 years ago. I'll put it that way. 20 years ago, when you sent something to them, whether it was right or wrong, that's what you were going to get. So if you send them something that didn't work, if it doesn't work good, then they're going to replicate that, and it's not going to work good when they finish it. Now they'll kind of stop and say, hey, this isn't going to work real good. Do you think we should change this a little bit? So
what kind of products do you guys have coming up soon? Anything new in the works other than the project guy?
I just finished.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear part of what you said. Did you say what other projects?
Yeah, what new projects do you guys have coming up?
So I've been working with company Panache Palace, just like the old company from the 80s that did the Voltron toys, and just finished up a 15-inch figure for them that are licensed, that just hit the States, and so they've been showing those and selling those, and that's been doing really well. And we're working on some more Voltron related stuff with them. I don't want to speak too much. It's not my project, but that's I don't have a lot of fun boxing up people's orders and stuff. I do it because it's necessary to keep things moving, but I don't find a lot of joy in shipping things. So, but I do really like working and taking people's ideas and taking them from start to finish, and getting, I enjoy that part of the process, the creative part and the manufacturing part, a lot more than running a website and some of the other stuff. So I see myself and hope in the future that I'll be doing more of that type of stuff, where I help people get their projects made, and that's where my passion and enjoyment comes in, I think.
I think another good project that Jason's got going on that he hasn't brought up yet is the Lincoln Monsters that he's doing with a couple other guys, and that's just a very creative project. I love what they're doing and how they're kind of tying it into something similar to the old Hammer Studios. And there's these movies, and here's the figures from them. That it's just. I think the first two are starting to get distributed now, a Frankenstein and a Dracula, and they're just really cool figures, more in the Migos scale, but based on some toy lines in the past, and that's a cool project.
So what are those basically like the Astro Command bodies with?
They're more of a Migos style body. I'm gonna ask my wife to bring one in here real quick.
Okay. Yeah, because I would like to know the difference. I've never actually handled a Mego figure. I thought these were like how Mego figures were made, kind of.
No, they're different.
So
there's the Mego figure is about 8 inches, and the Astro Command's about 8.5 inches. So there's a size difference.
There's times that I wish they were exactly the same size. Many times. That would have made life so much easier. Because it's kind of like we've got Mego people, and we've got Adventure Command people, and some of those people buy both, and some only buy this and some only buy that. So you make a cool thing over here, and it's just a little too big, or you make something over here and it's just a little too small. Yep.
So, yeah, that's like the difference between the 3.75 inch and the 4 inch scale G.I. Joe figures. How there was so much.
So I think
still calls the 4 inch figures 3 3/4, but they're not. They're actually 1/18.
Yeah, I think that they but they're I think for all intents and purposes there's a lot of similarities with the size and the cloth outfits and the boots and the general aesthetic that they were going for. My wife's bringing me a couple. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
She's always this nice. Don't
Thank
let
you.
anybody tell you. So yeah, here's the Frankenstein, and this is the artwork that came on an original 70s package on one side. And then on the other side, a friend of ours, Chris Franklin, he did the art on the other side. So you can display it either way. And then if you look at the word Frankenstein, it's misspelled because that's the way it was originally when it came out. They misspelled the word. So we've had people.
This is based on a figure from when?
The 1970s. They were kind of Lincoln. I don't have a lot of information on the history. Steve may know more, but they were kind of a knockoff company, I think, like A-High and Remco and those. So they basically, they didn't want to steal the Universal head sculpt, so they came up with their own head sculpt. He's got like a scar, and then the bolts are up here on top of the head because I think Universal's got the bolts down on the neck. And so it's it's very, you can't hardly see, but there's little tiny buttons on it and little pockets and clothing and
and the neat thing, Terry, is the original figures that these are kind of based on were really cheaply made, and the uniforms were really cheaply made, and so most of them didn't really hold up over time. So what Jason and those folks have done is they've made one that has the aesthetic appeal of it. It looks like them, but the figure itself and the soft goods in that are so much higher quality on these. So you get that look and feel and that nostalgia, but you get something that's a really nice figure and really nice outfits and whatnot.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah,
and I believe they have some glow in the dark features too, right, Jason?
Yeah. Well, the hands are glow in the dark, but they come with 3 extra sets of hands, regular color, and we went with a green skin tone on Dracula, and If you like the old Ben Cooper Halloween mask and the vintage Halloween stuff, I mean, these fit right in. The originals have become super expensive. I think some of them are probably $500 to $1,000. I bet. I'm not up on prices. So this is a nice alternative without, lowering the cost of the originals. But the amount of details that they put on the clothing and stuff, Brian Heiler, he put together the clothing and stuff, prototypes for these, and the factory replicated everything really well. And so I'm a huge monster fan, horror fan. And so this was kind of a dream come true for me. So like I said, I make a lot of stuff that I like to have on my shelf.
Yeah.
For selfish reasons.
Jada Toys did some 6-inch Universal Monsters figures, and I had to have all those, and like they haven't come out anymore lately. So
yeah, I'm originally was more of a kind of really older monster stuff, but recently I've been watching all the Rob Zombie movies, and I know that you either love him or hate him, but man, that guy's got an eye for capturing the look and feel of some of those 80s slasher films and stuff.
Yeah, I think he does too.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that, and just the way the film looked and the way everything looked. So yeah, so thanks for mentioning that, Steve. My brain's going in 1,000 different directions. This has been a fun project. So that's kind of one of my rules, is that I only like to work with people that I like, that I could go hang out with. And so that's been a good thing. I always enjoy meeting up with Steve at shows and stuff and talking online. And the same thing with these monsters and the Voltron and all that, is that I just like to work with people that I enjoy talking to, that have similar interests. And I think some of that love, shows up in the end product. And I think to some people, when they're working on toys and things, it's a job, or, it's something that they know how to 3D model and they've been asked to do something. But I think you can tell the difference when somebody's really into something, and you can see it in the end product and in the details and stuff.
I always like getting to talk to Steve about stuff like that, because there's always something that comes up that just shows that he's kind of like an encyclopedia of all this information way back.
Yeah.
Toy lines. Just stuff that you would never even think of or know about.
Yeah, so I saw you picked up a Strike Force figure, the Atomic Mike one, earlier. And see that there Steve kind of helped me out with some of that. There was a 12-inch set that came out in the 70s with that same color scheme. And so most people see that, and they may not put two and two together. It may look familiar, but there's a lot of little Easter eggs and a lot of this stuff for other things that we played with, or and so a lot of people don't catch it, but they like it.
I'm a bit young for some of that stuff, but like my dad had a lot of the figures from the 60s, and then I ended up with a book that had all of these figures from the 60s and 70s, 80s in this book. And I used to read this thing all the time. And that was one of the figures and one of the characters that intrigued me the most. That, and then the Super Joe line from the 70s.
Yeah.
It was
so I only had one. I had the talking commander, and I had the Jeep with the searchlight. And that was the only 12-inch stuff that I had. And then Star Wars hit, and life changed for me when Star Wars hit. And then I discovered the 3 3/4-inch Joe stuff in '83, and it was still early enough that I could go back and get all the '82 straight arms. So I had all the '83 versions, and after much searching, I was able to run down all the '82 versions. And even though the '83s had improved articulation, I had to find the originals. But so yeah, interesting thing. I've been collecting a lot of catalogs and a lot of advertising and stuff for action figures. And I never, and I know that I knew this information, but I never really put it all together. But, you know, all this stuff that we're collecting now and that we're talking about and all that all started with, you know, like in 64, right, Steve? I mean, when you look at catalogs from 60 to 63, I mean, there's tricycles, there's, you know, baseballs, footballs, cap guns. And so
technically, wouldn't it have started in like 58 or 59 with Barbie?
Yeah.
Well, on the girl side.
Yeah, girl side. Yeah. But 64, like, I guess the 64 in the catalogs and stuff, things started getting interesting, you know?
Yeah.
And I knew that, but seeing, you know, when I started collecting these catalogs and stuff and putting, you're starting to put all this together, the progression, you know, of where it started, where it's at to now, and everything in between. It's pretty fascinating. So I'm working on a passion project, like a wish book, and it's going to be all these different advertisings and things from over the years, from toy lines from the 60s all the way through to probably, like, I don't know. To me, a lot of toys kind of ended for me like in the late 90s, early 90s, and then started back up, you know, later. So probably 60s to 90s. I'm going to put all this together. So it's kind of neat seeing how things progressed.
So what's the next Winterfest date, location? I'm going to put a link to all of this in the description of the videos.
Okay.
But,
so we do have a separate web page for Winterfest now. It's www.gijoewinterfest.com, all one word. The Winterfest show is January 25th with the Friday night preview on January 24th. It's still at the Parakeet Conference Center, which is our new home for the show. The Winterfest we refer to as our smaller show, even though it's quite a big room that we're in. Just for the Kentuckiana Toy Expo, which is our summer show, we take the whole conference center. And there's a whole second big room that we took this. And this year was our first time doing that and filled everything up. And then also for the summer show, we'll probably have some guests in. We'll have some seminars. In the past, we've had some contests. We'll probably have some displays where people that do custom stuff can bring it in and display their work. So it's got some more activity to it. But the winter show is a great show, and you know, this will be the fifth one. It's amazing that we've been doing it that long on the winter show, and you know, knock on wood, we'll have good weather and everybody will have a good time.
Are you going to have an exclusive Astro or Adventure Command figure for that one?
Potentially. If we may have something that debuts there. Just you know, we're working with some folks, and if some things turn around and we can pull it together, it will be. If not, we always can push them back to the summer show. But I think there'll be some new. I think there'll be some new stuff there.
That's the bad thing about this manufacturing is it never lines up with the shows every single time.
Right.
So
it's never going to line up where you want it to.
That they just had the Voltron show. I think it was last week, and the figures for that that we made for them. They came like a few days after the show. It's always a few days after. It's always a week after. All these monsters figures I'm shipping out this weekend, and Halloween just ended. That's one thing that's is challenging is in that people don't realize is that a factory imagine going to your work and saying, hey, we got this guy, he wants to order 500 pieces and everybody needs to make a priority out of it. And, that's really essentially what we're doing sometimes is going to these factories and with these small orders and then trying to get them to adhere to a schedule is difficult, and so that's where you really got to develop those relationships with them, and you know that kind of thing. So it's hopefully we'll have some stuff turned around quickly. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. That's one of the things that I wish I could crack the Da Vinci Code on how to get a factory to get stuff on time.
Right. One of the things that I'm really happy to have for that upcoming show, and I'm pretty sure that a few other people at least, will probably have these as well. But the new 3 3/4 O-ring figures from Super 7,
Yeah,
the G.I. Joe figures. Like I've cracked a few of these open, and I'm super impressed with them. And I can't stress enough how well of a job they've done with those. I've seen a couple people complain, but I think that we're just going to have that with pretty much anything anymore.
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Can't satisfy everybody.
No, not at all.
I'm looking forward to the Crimson or the Twins. I don't have that set yet. Did you get that one?
I ordered it, but it shipped DHL, so I don't know if it's coming from China or from the States.
So yeah, I'm not gonna buy. I collect so many different things, and there was a time with the 3 3/4 inch stuff that I had. My collection was like 3 times bigger than it is now. Where I collected every convention piece, and now I like, the period of time when I was playing with them was probably 83 to 87, and so those items I really gravitate to, and then certain pieces that came out later. But I'm not a completist anymore. But I'm hoping that Super 7 makes some pieces that I wish that would have been available back then. Like, I don't know.
They're supposed to be doing that. They're supposed to make a lot of stuff that hasn't been produced before, like comic-inspired figures and cartoon-inspired figures. There's like some really key pieces that I hope that we get. And
what would be the key pieces that you would like to see?
I want to see some of the stuff from the more in-depth episodes, like Civilian Dressed Shipwreck, Mara. I want to see a Games Master.
What about the Soft Master and the Hard Master?
Oh yeah, I'd love to see those guys in 3 3/4 form. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
The Viper. The Window Viper. I want them to make the Window Viper. That would be awesome.
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm trying to think of their names. There was that Venom. Was it Dr. Venom? I think they did a convention figure for him, but
oh yeah, Dr. Venom.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that one. And then what was the one where Snake Eyes was up on the mountain and that guy helped him out?
The Blind Woodsman. That's all he was ever called.
Yeah. I would like. I've got the retro styled one, but I'd like to have an O-ring figure of him.
I'd like to have an O-ring figure like that, and I'd also like to see that figure come into the classified line, because they've shown the irradiated Snake Eyes with the polar bear.
Oh, okay.
The, Mass Device miniseries. So
what was that one where was it Duke that had the headband on that controlled him?
Yeah,
and he was like in the Gladiator.
Yep.
Or something. Yeah.
Are you talking about the big gladiator guy, Raymar?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're supposed to be making an O-ring Raymar.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I'd like to see all of the main characters from that cartoon too.
It's definitely an exciting time for the O-ring stuff, like as you mentioned earlier, with all the different companies making stuff, and I'm not gonna trash mouth the Super 7 stuff. There's aesthetics that I like and some that I'm not as big as a fan.
yeah.
But I love the fact that they're doing it. But then I look at like the stuff that Matt sculpted with me, and I look at like the call sign longbow stuff and stuff that Darren's doing, and some of these things. And I really think the future of a lot of this stuff is with the indie guys and stuff. The creativity and
Well, I think a lot of it is too, man.
Yeah, but it's nice to have so many options.
I think for some of the stuff like what we were talking about, just like the inspired from comics and
Yeah.
cartoons, like some of those obscure characters, I think that it's probably going to be up to a company that can afford to like actually license.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I think for me, and everybody's different, but like I don't. You need to have like a classic Cobra Commander to sell a line nowadays.
Yeah.
But I don't need a classic Cobra Commander in my collection because I already have one. So that's where I would probably gravitate to the figures that fit in well that weren't made, and not necessarily. I don't know if I need another Snake Eyes or two. I have Snake Eyes in like so many different formats that's just my own personal taste. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
I was excited to see the brothers. Me and my friend used to walk home from school and we go up to the 7-Eleven and get a GI Joe comic, and then when we would read that comic on the way home, and then we would go out and look for those figures. Hasbro played that game where they're like, it's a big advertising thing in the comic, like, hey, you can play with this toy, and then we would be at Kmart and all these places trying to locate those. So I remember when those issues came out with Tomax, and I don't know how you pronounce the other one. Is it Zaymont?
Yeah.
But that was a good.
Steve, don't you either already have a comic or have a comic coming out for Astro or Adventure Command?
We worked with some folks, and they've got something separate that they did as a Kickstarter and whatnot. And depending on how it does, there may be more of it. Hopefully, once it gets out in the public, people will like it and will be able to continue it. But that was kind of a with the Power Comics group, and they kind of wanted to use kind of the figures that we were designing and built something from it. So we'll see how that goes.
Steve,
I will say I've seen a copy of the issue that they did, and it looks fantastic. The artwork is good. The storyline was creative and that. So fingers crossed that it gets out. People like it, and there can be more of it going forward.
Steve also has done some work with Scott Morrissey. Is that how you say his last name?
That is. So we've done some sets. We've done some small run sets where we've had some comics and some art done in that for the line, and it's got that vintage style feel of the art that's always entertaining.
Yeah. So a lot of people that buy stuff from me, they don't buy like the finished complete figures as much as they do the bodies and the suits and the heads and different things. They want to do their own characters. So whenever we try to like build a framework for the story, but we don't try to tell the whole story because people
want to tell their own.
Yeah, they want to kind of create their own characters and stuff. And
I will say another thing, that project that we kind of worked on is a buddy of mine named Rocco Jerome does a comic book called The Ghost Agents, and he was setting up at the show, and he realized that one of our figures looks an awful lot like one of his characters, Max Allman, who's one of the Ghost Agents. So we worked with him and did this is the figure, although the Max Allman has brown hair. This one has black hair. But we did line with him with the jumpsuit and that, and so that's been kind of fun. And so we'll. I think he's got the most current issue out on Kickstarter right now for the next Ghost Agents story, and we'll be working more with him and doing some different versions of Max Allman that'll use our figure with just some different soft goods on him and whatnot.
Very cool. Well, I think that's about it for tonight, guys, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Anytime, man. It was great.
Absolutely, man.
Always great talking about toys, and always great talking to you guys. So it's been a good, fun night.
Absolutely. I hope we'll see you at one of the Kentucky shows again sometime soon.
I need to give Steve an answer this weekend, so I'm going to try to make it. I really, I think I've been to 2 of the shows there in Kentucky, and they have been some of the best put together run shows. I mean, I'm getting to that point in my life where I don't like going to a show and parking like 6 blocks away and hauling all my crap, in and stuff. And so, everything about the show in the Kentucky, it was just real well run. There was no confusion about what I needed to do. It was easy to get into, easy to get my stuff in there. And so it was it's a very enjoyable experience. And I went home with a lot more. Even though I sold stuff, I think I went home with more boxes.
It works that way.
The last show was one where I ended up with a lot more stuff than what I intended to.
Yeah, my wife, she always asks me like, "What did you make?" And I'm like, "Make? You mean what? What did I lose?" I spent everything I made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. I appreciate it, and thank you for all the great information.
Awesome. Good talking to you.
I'll get this posted up, and I'll add some links in the description for both of you all, and we'll see you all again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good, man. Appreciate it. Good night.
Uh-huh.